Would Alan Mulally really leave Ford for Microsoft? Are GM's new pickups failing and Tesla catches fire in a bad way? Strap yourselves in, it's time for Motor Money. Hi, I'm Motley Fool analyst Rex Moore. Welcome to another thrilling edition of Motor Money. We're all autos all the time and how it relates to you, the investor. And my co-pilot on this road trip is Motley Fool senior auto analyst John Rosevear. He's not live and in color from his basement in Massachusetts today. You're on set in headquarters for 1 week only. Well, thanks. Welcome in.
Thank you very much.
It. And as always, we'll start things off with some headlines. And our first headline from Bloomberg and widely reported around the internets, Ford CEO Alan Mulally is among the names being discussed by Microsoft's board of directors as a successor to Steve Ballmer, who will be retiring within a year. And John, this one caught me by surprise. All I can say is, really? Where did this come from?
That's about what I said. Really? Where did this come from? I have no idea who or what is driving this rumor. It was really something proposed in Microsoft's boardroom, or somebody's trying to, make hay for somebody else. I think it's really unlikely that Alan Mulally would leave Ford at 68, having made a ton of money from stock options that he got way back when, but that have invested in the last couple of years. And he's made something like $300 million just in the last couple of years. He's 68. He's got the succession plan all set up at Ford, with Mark Fields having moved into the COO role last year. He's the heir apparent. There's a whole generation of executives behind him who are in their 40s, who are being groomed for the top jobs in Ford around the world. It seems like his plan had been to just kind of cruise at Ford till the end of next year and then sort of drift off into the sunset and go play a lot of golf and spend his money. And when I talked to him last, which was actually last year right after Mark Fields' promotion, he was really talking about wanting to be engaged in the long-range future planning of Ford and to step back from the day-to-day operations a bit. So it sounded to me a little bit like a guy who was thinking about retirement and just wanted to, set everything up just right before he left to sort of cap off his achievement. Well, I don't see him going to a completely different industry at 68 that is facing, another company that's facing some big challenges. It doesn't ring true to me.
One thing that does drive a lot of these things, whether it's coaching, CEOs, they like the challenge. Maybe their ego gets stoked a little bit. Now, you've talked to him. You know him a bit. You've followed him for years. Does he have that kind of ego?
I think Alan certainly has a healthy ego and thinks well of himself. He is not, though. He's a team builder. I mean, he's not a shameless self-promoter type. Not at all. He's a very likable guy, actually, very likable CEO. I don't know if he, I suppose anybody could get sort of infected with this idea that, if I can do this, then I'll be, remembered for all time.
This is awesome.
This is why 70-year-old men run for president.
That's right.
After years in the Senate or whatever. Could I see it happening? We see more improbable things in the news every week. It doesn't feel likely to me. And though it could happen mechanically, in the sense that Mulally has said he would stay till the end of next year. Ford's board has apparently said, Alan, if you want to go earlier, we won't hold you here.
Well, that was my next question. What would it mean to Ford if he does go?
Well, Ford's got its succession plan already in motion. I think it would mean that Mark Fields, who is clearly being groomed for the top job, who has very recently been making more public appearances and so forth as the face of Ford, transitioning away from Alan. And clearly there's a plan in motion that anticipates that over the next 15 months or whatever, he will step firmly into the top job, unless he screws it up somehow. In which case, there's a bench behind him, and I think Alan is grooming all of those folks to step up and be the leaders of Ford for the next decade or whatever. And I think if he left tomorrow, they would just step in, And I don't think it would make a whole lot of difference to Ford's near-term direction. These are guys who all buy into the plan, the one Ford plan that has been set in motion for several years, and who are already running it effectively, just with his mentorship.
Okay, good deal.
As a Ford investor, I wouldn't be terrified. I'd be bummed because he's done a terrific job, and I like him personally, but I don't think it would wreck the stock or the company's prospects.
Okay, let's move on to our next headline now, and this one from the Motley Fool and my current desk mate, John Rosevear. September U.S. auto sales. John, Ford was up, but GM and the overall market was down. How do you break this down?
Well, it was a quirky month. We had a few different things, calendar kinds of things going on. There were 2 fewer selling days, which usually means there's more Sundays when most auto dealers are closed versus last September. Labor Day was early, so the Labor Day sales totals got pulled into August. You know, August was great for a lot of people. It was part because the Labor Day sales were already going on, and it makes, you know, some of those were pulled out of September. But there's also some other stuff going on. Ford has continued to look strong. The overall market was down a little over 4%, but Ford was up 6%. Some of their models are doing very well. The Fiesta, which was refreshed earlier this year, was up over 25%. Getting traction in places like California, where it's traditionally been import territory. They're doing very well selling it against Toyotas and Hondas. And their pickups continue to do quite well. There's been a continued boom in demand for pickup. The Ford F-Series line was up almost 10%. On the other hand, at GM, total sales were down 11%, and the Chevy Silverado was down about 10%. And I think the story in the pickup market there, we'll talk about that a little more.
In a moment, right.
But you know, GM had its own points of strength. Cadillac was up 10%, Buick was up 6%. But you know, I think it was overall a down market, and Ford, with some strategic use of incentives and with some strong models in markets that are receptive to them, was able to pull out a gain, and they gained some market share.
Good deal. And our final headline from the Wall Street Journal, and this video has gone viral now, a Tesla Model S near Seattle, Washington, collided with a large metallic object and caught fire. And now, no one was injured. The person was able to get out and everything. But the stock declined 6% yesterday, and it's under some continued pressure today. Does this mean anything?
No.
I agree with you.
No, I mean, the fear here is, well, we had that Chevy Volt that was crash tested by the government and then sat in a junkyard and then caught fire several days later.
Right.
And that was determined to be a battery fluke, and GM responded by sort of armoring up the battery pack in the Volts a little better. Tesla's battery packs are pretty well armored. Apparently in this case what happened was the guy hit something big in the road, and the car told him, you need to pull over right now as soon as it's safe. And he did, and he got out, and then the car went up in flames, kind of on the edge of an intersection there. And it was the nose that burned. One little compartment was ruptured. Tesla says, well, our safety systems work. The driver was safe. No fire entered the passenger compartment, et cetera, et cetera. And they say, you know, this is a victory for our great engineering, the kind of thing Tesla says. But you can see why the market would be spooked. I mean, this is a new technology. There was some thoughts of, you know, there may be fire risks with lithium-ion batteries in such huge numbers powering a car, and this incident plays into that story a little bit. And of course, Tesla stock has been flying very high, and when you have a stock that's flying very high, you don't have the underpinnings to hold it up when you have a little bad day. So, you know, a hiccup can be felt a long way. I think that's all this is going to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, this doesn't, regardless of the valuation of the stock, this is not a chink in any the long-term investing thesis.
I don't think so. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. I mean, cars crash and catch fire just
All
because somebody happened to catch a Tesla on tape, you know. I don't think it's that big a deal.
Good deal. Thanks, John. And now we will move to another segment called Under the Hood, and it's where John and I kind of take a deep dive into some of the bigger stories around the auto world. And today we are talking about GM's new pickup trucks, and are they failing? And the reason we're saying this, September sales numbers, as we've already alluded to, Ford and Chrysler pickups both outpaced the overall market, but GM's fell well behind. John, what is the deal with this?
Well, GM has been rolling out their all-new pickups, and at the same time, they had a big surplus of the old pickups. You know, the 2013s are the old ones, the 2014s are the brand new redesigned model. And they amassed a huge inventory at the end of the year before they shut down the factory to change it over at the end of last year of the 2013s, so they could continue to sell them. And they've been selling those at a discount. Cost-conscious buyers have been looking at those, you know, against the Ford and the Chrysler and so forth, and been getting some good deals. Now those are largely sold down. Last month was the first full month for the new pickup where they had a presence at dealers. About 60% of the pickups they sold last month were the new pickups, and GM has not wanted to put incentives on its brand new product.
Okay.
At the same time, Ford's really cranked them up on their product. I mean, their incentives in September of this year were up about $1,000 over their incentives from last year. And we're talking the difference between $3,700 and $4,700 on the F-150 pickup. So this is big bucks. Now, incentives are part of how you sell pickups. But, you know, the F-150 is in its last year of life, but it's still a good product. It's still a competitive product. And the Ram was recently refreshed. Incentives are up somewhat there, too, versus the deals that Chevy dealers were really not making on the new pickup. I think that just hurt them a little bit. GM just rolled out, as of the 1st of October, $1,000 incentive and some little extra stuff on the higher end models of the all-new Silverado. So they're going to try and play this game a little bit. But, you know, at the same time, I mean, their goal has been to get bigger average transaction prices on the pickups, something they weren't able to do with the old model, something Ford has been able to do by having more features and options that people are willing to pay up for. You know, the F-150 starts at like 23, 24,000, but the average transaction price is close to 40 grand.
Wow.
GM is getting into that territory with their new pickup. We have some numbers from Edmunds that were released earlier this week, and it shows that GM is getting right in there with the new pickup, and they're not going to want to throw $3,000 incentives on those to knock that back, but at the same time, they want to keep the market going. Getting those transaction prices up is really important to GM, increasing its profits in North America, a big priority for them to catch up to the kind of margins and profits that Ford has been able to make here, again, because they get great prices for their products, including and especially the pickups.
So as you look out then at the sales numbers the next month or two, do you expect that we won't continue seeing a depressed sales numbers compared to the other trucks?
I don't think so. Ford may outgain them as Ford continues to ratchet up incentives. They're entering their own phase of selling down the F-150. They haven't announced the next one yet, but we know it's a matter of months before they have an all new truck to sell, and so they're producing the last of what will be this generation of trucks, and they're going to be pretty aggressive because they want to hold the #1 market position. At the same time, GM wants to gain ground with its new pickup, which is more competitive than the old pickup, so they're going to be a little bit aggressive too. But where the happy medium is in terms of how much discount do you offer to get market share, we'll see how the market goes over the next month or two. But I don't anticipate that GM's in trouble here.
All right.
At least not yet.
You'll let us know, though. Right?
Of course.
Right. Time now for our fun and final segment. Now, this one today, we do something a little different each week. It's based kind of on an old bit where you have three people. Who would you date? Who would you kill? Who would you marry? Now, I don't think date was the word they were using, but we're going to make this an investing thing. I'm going to throw out three companies to you, and you haven't seen them ahead of time.
That's
right?
true.
Nothing up my sleeve here. Okay. And you have to pick one company to buy, one to sell, and one to hold, okay? Mm-hmm. So the three companies are Tesla, SiriusXM Radio, and NVIDIA, which has really gotten into making chips for the displays, for instance, in the Tesla Model S. So they have an auto section and everything. So they're not three automakers I'm throwing out to you, just one, and a couple of related ones. So
tricky game, right?
Yeah, it is a tricky game. So choose one to buy, one to sell, one to hold.
Well, I don't want to buy Tesla.
You don't? Okay.
I don't want to buy Tesla. Tesla's come a long way. If I can hold it.
For valuation purposes, is the reason the valuation?
Yeah, there are ways to look at Tesla as a high growth company. I feel like I should look at them as an automaker with growth prospects, to be sure. But they have to execute to perfection and get ideal tailwinds and have everybody else fail and everything else to get near their current valuation, I think, long term. And so I think it's flown too far. Can they go out to 500,000 cars a year? Yeah, I think maybe they can. They're doing a great job building their brand. They've executed very well, but there are huge competitors lurking out there. And one of these sleeping giants, whether it's Volkswagen with Audi or GM with Cadillac or BMW or somebody unexpected out of left field, one of these sleeping giants is going to wake up and suddenly they're not going to be the only one out there with a premium electric vehicle line. And Tesla may survive and thrive anyway, but maybe not at the margins that investors are hoping for. So I wouldn't sell it right now just because they're investors. Their execution has been gangbusters, but I think I would put that in the hold.
Hold.
SiriusXM Radio, I should start this by saying that I am an addict. I have it in my car.
Really?
And,
all right.
I will have it in my next car, and I only have it in the car, but it's $150 a year or something like that. But I wonder how long that's going to last. I wonder how long until Pandora or Apple Radio, iTunes Radio, as Apple moves more and more towards in-car solutions. iOS in the car is a big initiative they're starting to push, more so next year, but that's going to be part of that, delivering content that way. There are other solutions. Google has one now that could come in through Android. I don't know. I'm sure this will excite a lot of our viewers. Sirius XM Radio seems to have very enthusiastic shareholders.
Indeed they do.
But I think I would make that the sell. And NVIDIA is an intriguing buy. I mean, just from the auto business, more sophisticated in-car displays are certainly the wave of the future. And to the extent that they can grab, not knowing a whole lot about their business, to the extent that they can grab more of that, that is something to take a closer look at.
Okay.
The Tesla gets raves from anything, but everybody loves that huge touchscreen.
Yeah, I've been
in the
car
Model
and I
S.
love
Yep.
it. Yes.
It's very interesting, and there's just more and more going in that direction. And some of the solutions that the major automakers have been doing are not all that well executed. Ford takes a lot of grief for My Ford Touch, which they built with Microsoft. GM's Q system that they have in the Cadillacs, which is a similar infotainment touchscreen thing, that gives some critics headaches too. And nobody loves Toyotas either, and so on and so forth. So this is a place where excellence in hardware and software could make a big difference, and we're going to see more pressure for that in coming years.
Well, as explained to me, I visited the NVIDIA booth at CES this last January, and they had a Tesla out there, and they explained you have to have a great processor. You can't be pressing buttons and having a delay, and that just increases the distraction. By the way, the large, big screen helps more than hurts your distraction, because you're easier to see things. You don't have to squint and look at things.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to become more and more critical as time goes on. And of course, with a car, you get kind of a unique application. The hardware has to survive several years of, temperature extremes and vibrations and sometimes grime and so forth. And it's going to be in use for several years.
And
we all trade in our cell phones every 2 or 3 years or less on a new model, but you're going to keep a car. Car is expected to have a useful life of about a decade. The magic of Ford's system is they made it upgradable and they made it robust, but that means the processor's got to be pretty good up front if it's not going to be creaky 7 years or even 3 years from now. So that's another interesting challenge there.
Excellent point. Great job as always. John and I are out of gas, by the way, and next week we will be in New York City for the unveiling of the Cadillac Escalade.
Yes, we will.
And so we'll have our show from there next week, so be sure to see us there. For John Rosevear, I'm Rex Moore. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.